listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting us spend some time with you. I am being very carefully monitored and supervised.
Yes, you are. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
We do appreciate it. If you haven't been to GiveGod90.com lately, you might want to check that out. Author Jerry Mitchell's where the books... I didn't say that very good, did I? Author Jerry Mitchell is where the books are available. That's all one word, by the way. If you go there and buy the books, we appreciate it because that does
help keeps this
going. If you are so inclined, we're on just about everything from YouTube to you name it. So it's available out there. And we appreciate it when you hit those like and share buttons and all those good things. Yeah, notifications, all of those things, the thumbs up, everything that you do, just because of the way the algorithm works, it just makes it easier for people to find us, and we can keep doing what we do.
And share.
And share. I think all the advertisements are done. I hope.
So.
All right. Sometimes, and this is something I complain about often, sometimes the scholarly experts, and you know who I'm talking about, all the people that have the PhDs and all the postgraduate stuff, they become quite arrogant when it comes to receiving new information. And, well, let me use this example. The Egyptologists who, after years and years of painstaking research, looking at archaeological evidence, and they still can't see proof of the Hebrew people in Egypt because they're looking for them in the wrong time or the wrong timeline. And then, when someone outside of academia looks at the same evidence and they use the Bible as the foundation to which they get their point of view, they see a completely different timeline. Tim Mahoney's a great example. He's got a lot of films, and he uses the patterns of evidence to show when the Hebrew people were in Egypt and when they left. But the scholars still refuse to change their mind. It's pretty obvious if you look at just the evidence we can see if we look at it through the biblical narration. There are theologians who will argue vehemently that Mount Sinai is on the Sinai Peninsula, when the Bible clearly states it's in the land of Midian, which is, by the way, in Saudi Arabia. It's on the other side of the Sea of Aqaba from where St. Catherine's is. And even with all of the archaeological evidence that's on display at Jabal al-Lawz, what they call the Mountain of Moses, most of the archaeologists are still going to reject the idea that Mount Sinai can be exactly where the Bible says it is. We have friends that have gone there, sent us pictures, and the archaeological evidence is overwhelming that that's where the things in the wilderness take place. Now, maybe you're familiar with the saying, "Don't bother me with the facts, my mind's already made up." Well, there's a lot of people around today who demand proof the Bible's true. But they're the same ones who reject the proof that's in plain sight. What they're really looking for is confirmation that what they believe is, what they think is true, what they have come to believe is true, that's correct. And that's when the arguments begin, because they reject any new archaeological information, any new real information, accurate information. There are a lot of people who look at Josephus And that's where they get their history. But what they don't realize is that Josephus based his historical record on the events of the Hebrew Bible and not from history books that he might have had access to. There's, in Israel, the antiquities experts and archaeologists who talk about, the Stone Age, the Bronze Age. They don't stop to realize and think these things happened at the exact same time. And these same people speak about 10,000 years ago and evolutionary concepts as being, gospel for them. The government of Turkey spent a great amount of money paving a road that leads to the Noah's Ark site, and they've built a visitor center there. Now that means the Turkish government acknowledges that this is real and not some fantasy. You don't spend that kind of money unless you've got a great deal of certainty that this site is the resting place of the ark. Why do so many people demand proof the Bible's true? Well, possibly because for years, Christians have tried to prove this thing called blind faith. You don't have to see it, you just have to believe. Another reason could be, for many, many years, the Jewish people have been persecuted, right? And another reason might be because for a very long time, the people who reject our Creator have been asking the same question that the serpent asked Eve in the garden. Did God really say? Now, one of those questions not many people are familiar with, because it's one of those things that unless you realize what's happening, you don't know how to think about it properly. And that's what we're going to kind of look at. And what we're looking at tonight is Daniel chapter 5. So let's look at this passage. Should be familiar to some, might not be familiar to all, but it should be.
King Belshazzar gave a big banquet for 1,000 royal guests, and he drank wine with them. As Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave an order to his servants. He told them to bring the gold and silver cups that his ancestor Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. King Belshazzar wanted his royal guests to drink from those cups. He also wanted his wives and his slave women to drink from them. So he brought the gold cups. They had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his royal guests, his wives and his slaves, women, drank from them. As they were drinking, they praised their gods. Those gods were made from gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Then suddenly a person's hand appeared. The fingers wrote words on the plaster on the wall. This was near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. King Belshazzar was very frightened. His face turned white, his knees knocked together. He could not stand up because his legs were too weak. The king called for the magicians and wise men to be brought to him. He said to the wise men of Babylon, I will give a reward to anyone who can read this writing and explain it. I will give him purple clothes fit for a king. I will put a gold chain around his neck, and I will make him the third highest ruler in the kingdom.
Well, let's just hang on there for a minute and ask some questions. First question, right? First question. Why did the king want to use the gold and silver cups taken from the temple? Well, the different gods of Babylon, of the Babylonians, I should say, were, and there were many, but they were made of gold and silver along with wood and iron and stone. They were praising their own pagan gods while using cups that had been forged from the finest gold and silver on earth. And that's when something happened. Now, it's been called a mass hallucination, but no, it was real. Everybody that was there to witness it. The problem was they couldn't read what it said. So Belshazzar made the decree that anyone who could read it and interpret it would be made the third highest in the kingdom. So the next question should be, wait a minute, Why is it the third highest? Well, naturally, they couldn't have more authority than the king himself, right? That leaves the second open. You could be made the second highest. Why not second highest? That should be like a question that we need to ask. But we overlook that question. But for now, let's just read on. Go ahead and read that next part.
Then the king's mother came into the banquet room. She had heard the voices of the king and his royal guests. She said, "My king, live forever. Don't be afraid. Don't let your face be white with fear. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the days of your father, this man showed understanding, knowledge, and wisdom. He was like the gods in these things. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, put this man in charge of all the wise men. He ruled over all the fortune tellers, magicians, and wise men. The man I am talking about is named Daniel. The king gave him the name Belshazzar. He was very wise. He had knowledge and understanding. He could explain dreams and secrets. He could answer very hard problems. Call Daniel. He will tell you what the writing on the wall means."
Well, let's take another time out. We need to look at a couple of names. The king in Babylon is Belshazzar. Nebuchadnezzar gave Daniel the name Belshazzar, which means to protect the king. But that's what Belshazzar also means. There's only one letter sound difference. I don't know how many letters in cuneiform Babylonian that is. I don't speak cuneiform Babylonian. But if you look at it in Hebrew, you see there's only really one letter difference as well. You're going to see something else in a couple of minutes you might not realize until I let you in on this kind of lesser known revelation. But for now, let's just keep reading.
So they brought Daniel to the king. The king said to him, "Is your name Daniel? Are you one of the captives my father, the king, brought from Judah? I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and I have heard that you are very wise and have knowledge and understanding. The wise men and magicians were brought to me to read this writing on the wall. I wanted those men to explain to me what it means, but they could not explain. I have heard that you are able to explain what things mean, and you can find the answers to hard problems. Read this writing on the wall and explain it to me. If you can, I will give you purple clothes fit for a king, and I will give you a gold chain around your neck, and you will become the third highest ruler in the kingdom."
All right. So, again, we see the promise of third highest ruler in the nation, right? Why not second place? You know, Daniel gave the king a history lesson here, and I'm not going to make you listen to all of that. But he gives him a history lesson before he tells him what the writing said. And in doing so, he makes a reference that Belshazzar is a descendant of Nebuchadnezzar. Doesn't say he's his son. He says he's a descendant of Nebuchadnezzar. Now, this in biblical forensics is what we call a clue. Okay? Now, there's a lot of things that go with that. If I remember, I'll get to it in a second. But after Daniel tells, gives the king this history lesson, he tells him what the writing means. Mene, God has counted the days until your kingdom will end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found not good enough. Who other than Daniel would have the nerve to tell a king, you just ain't good enough, buddy? And then Parsin, your kingdom is being divided. It will be given to the Medes and the Persians. Even though Daniel Well, Daniel didn't insult the king. The writing on the wall insulted the king. But Belshazzar does indeed make Daniel the third highest in the nation. Why third? Right? I mean, after all, Pharaoh made Joseph the second highest in Egypt. What's all this third business about? Well, what a lot of people may not know is there is an accusation that the Bible can't be real because no King Belshazzar is recorded in Babylonian history. That is, until. And there's always an until, right? A British official and archaeologist, J.G. Taylor, in 1854, uncovered 5 cylinders that had become known as the cylinders of I'm going to ruin this name. Nabonidus, I think is how I'm going to say it. Maybe. I am terrible with ancient names sometimes. There's an interesting part of the translation of these cuneiform cylinders. And this translation answers the accusation. Let me quote. As for me, Nabonidus, king of Babylon, save me from sinning against your great Godhead, and grant me as a present of life long days. And as for Belshazzar, the eldest son, my offspring. Do I need to read that part again? And as for Belshazzar, the eldest son, my offspring, instill reverence in your great Godhead in his heart, and may he not commit any cultic mistake. May he be sated with a life of plenitude. End quote. You see, Belshazzar was a descendant of Nebuchadnezzar because Nebuchadnezzar was his grandfather, not his direct father. Nabonidus was the king, but ruled from a different land. And that left Belshazzar to rule directly in Babylon in his place. Now, when Daniel says, your father, that is a way of saying your ancestor. I'm not sure they used the word grandfather anywhere in the Hebrew language. Sometimes they used father's father. Sometimes they just left it at fathers. But Daniel doesn't call him his direct son. He calls him a descendant, right? So what we have here is outside of the Bible confirmation, right? Now, Yeshua, Jesus, is recorded as saying that it is an evil and adulterous generation that requires a sign. Well, are we any different for demanding proof that the Bible is, in fact, true? Think about that. Do we just throw out all of Josephus' work because it uses the Bible as the foundation for the history that so many depend on as being an accurate account? If we say we believe the Bible, why do we rely so heavily on outside information that is going to eventually confirm what was in the Bible to begin with? We're no better than the ones who were asking for a sign. We're really no better than the serpent who asked, did God really say? We should know better. We have all of the accounts of the people who knew better and still asked, and we know what happened to them. We have all of the accounts of the people who said, oh, I'll believe, And we know what happened to them, like Abraham, right? Even Moses, after his encounter with the burning bush, said, okay, if I have to, I have to. I'll do it. I'm not trying to say, let's just take it on blind faith. We can't just take it on blind faith. We have to know deep down in your knower of knowers, right, that it's true. Because if that's your starting point, if that's the way you're going to view things, if that's the way you're going to look at these worldly things, you come up with a different answer than the people who say, oh, it can't be true. It can't be real. There's no evidence. Well, yeah, there is. There's plenty of evidence. And as Tim Mahoney says, there's patterns of evidence that are developing all the time. I don't think there's any such thing as blind faith. I really don't. If you're going to sit in a chair, you're going to have to be able to see the chair to sit in, right? Well, unless you can't see it. But even then, I've watched people without sight, when they sit down, they feel for it, right? They know where it is. That's not blind faith. That's making sure that what you think is where it should be is actually where it should be. This whole thing of blind faith, we need to throw that out. We just need to get rid of it because it's not blind. We have the evidence. We see it. We have the Bible. We have the Word of the Almighty. We need to practice what we say. Oh, yeah, I believe the Bible. Well, then why are you looking for all this outside information? It's great to have all these revelations and go, oh, it's exactly where it's supposed to be. But do the scholars admit it? No, because they are too embedded in the things they've been doing. You see, if you're going to say the Bible's true, then live like the Bible's true. You know, David, Psalm 119, 142, your righteousness is everlasting and your law is true. Your word is true. Everything that you've given to us is true. You don't have to go outside of the Bible. You can see it in everything that's around you. You know, if you go out at night, it's, you know, the heavens declare the glory, right? All of these things add up to the Bible's true. You don't need to demand proof. The proof should be in the way that you live your life. And if you're living the way you're designed to live, that should be proof enough for anybody. So until next time.
Until next time.
We do wish you many, many blessings, everyone.
Yes, we do.